Hi, I'm Allie. Join me in creating these ancient earrings named after the fact that I've had a pair in a sample made for an ancient amount of time in ancient gold. And they're going to be based on our triangles. Not only are we basing them on a triangle stitch, but we are also going to do some fringe. So make sure to watch and see how that is all connected. If you do need any materials, go ahead to the bottom of the video below it to the description, hit that little down caret or show more button, and you can get a link to all the materials that you need for the project. So to get started, we are going to start with our interior triangle. From there, with the same piece of thread, we're going to do our fringe. And there's so many different ways to do the fringe and so many different sizes of triangles that you can use. One thing that I will say, material-wise, it's really great to start out with 11/0s and delicas. And then I am using the dragon thread. So I'm using the dragon thread in the green color. I have the black one right here, but I'm using the 0.006. And I love the dragon thread for this because not only is it stiff enough to hold the triangle really well, but it gives a nice flow to the fringe that it'll move around and sway without having to change from a stiffer wire for the triangle to a thinner, or thread rather, to a thinner for the drop. So to get started, we are going to begin with our 11/0 seed beads, and then we have some delica beads. We're starting with a triangle, so we are going to begin with 3 of our 11/0 seed beads, and we're letting them drop down to the bottom of our thread, and we are going to tie a knot. Now, how much room to leave on the end? We're just going to tie the knot so that way we have enough to grab onto and tie another knot as we completely finish off the project at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and right over left, left over right, tie that into a nice little triangle here. And I am using a size 10 needle because I'm not going back through my delicas or my beads that many times. From here, I want to sew through my next 11/0 seed bead to get away from the knot. And we are going to be doing almost a herringbone style here. I have lots of videos on simple triangles, so make sure to check those out if you need a little bit more triangle help. 2 beads go on, and I'm going to sew into the next 11/0 seed bead. And I'm using the Crystal Lab Wool for these. Next one, between those next 2 of the original, 2 seed beads go on, and I sew through the 3rd bead. Make those beads sit back in a herringbone style where they're sitting one next to one another. And you can see the holes open a little bit. And then connecting beads number 1 and number 3, right where that knot is, you're going to go ahead and add 2 more as well. From here, not only am I going to go through bead number 1 in the center, but I'm also going to go up through bead number 1 in that second row of the herringbone that I just did. So I'm sewing up bead number 1 and then also up bead number 1 from row 2, which is the row I'm just completing. Make those beads sit back, and you can see I'm changing my hands as I'm doing this to always go around in a circle. From here, you have that original group of 3, and then you have 2 seed beads sitting between each. From here, we're going to continue with that herringbone. So I want you to grab 2 more seed beads coming out of bead number 1 from that first group of 2, and you're going to sew down bead number 2. When you come out bead number 2, your thread's going to be right above one of those original 3 beads. And what we're going to do is grab one of our delica beads and sew over to bead number 2 in that second set of 2 from the previous row. Add 2 more beads in that herringbone there in the corner. Sew down bead number 2, getting those 2 beads, just like we did before, to sit nice and open. Add a delica bead in that open empty space and sew through the 3rd group of 2 up through bead number 1. Add 2 more 11/0 seed beads and sew down through bead number 2. Again, if you need help with these triangles a little bit slower, you can always slow me down or check out the triangle intro video as well. From here then, to get back over to my starter 2, I'm going to add 1 delica. And here's where you're going to make sure that you're going back through and that second row that we were just catching on to. So I'm going through the second row, not hopping up to the 3rd row that we just added. That completes the row. To get ready to continue on, we are going to step up through bead number 1 of that last row that we just added, that group of 2. We're going to continue with this herringbone stitch, adding 2 beads along the spine, going down bead number 2. And then as we let those sit open here, we're going to go into some peyote stitch. So we're going to add 1 delica, sew through that bright dyed silver lined magenta bead there. And then add one more bead and go over to get ready into my herringbone. So see how that peyote stitch just really happens very naturally between our herringbone spines or our herringbone little exterior edges. 2 beads go on. I go down through the next herringbone, letting that sit. And then as I get over to this next side of my triangle, 1 delica goes on. I sew through the delica that's already there. Another delica goes on, and I sew through the 11-0. That's first in the next side of the spine. Once again, 2 beads go on. So down through bead number 2. And as you come across to the third side of the triangle here, complete that peyote one more time. 1 delica goes on. You're going to sew through the delica that's already there. Another delica goes on. And once again, when you get back to that starter side, you want to make sure that you're not jumping up to that first grouping of 2 beads, that first herringbone row. You're completing, which seems like you're going down 1 row. If you jump up, you'll notice a little gap there, and take your needle out and come back down. From here, we are going to step up then through that first bead of the row we just completed. You're going to take this around and around and around, doing those same exact steps as you increase each row of the peyote stitch to add 3 beads, then 4, then 5. It's up to you how big you want to make your triangle and how big you want your earring to be. You can see here in my ancient gold example, there are 4. I went to the size of 4. Here in the purple, I'm going to 5. Once we get ready to do our final row, so once we have 4 on and then we're getting ready to do 5, we're going to just do 1 bead in each corner of our herringbone stitch to get our corner. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going around in my sample piece here till I get 4 beads wide or 4 beads tall on each side of my triangle, and then we'll come back together and I'll show you how to do 1 and continue on. As your triangle increases in size and you're getting ready to put on your last delica here, you can see that as you get into this and as you get familiar with it, I just sewed through that first bead in my last herringbone row and then also came out through that one that I just completed. So I now have 4 beads that I've added on the peyote side. And I'm going to add 1 more row of the peyote. When I'm on the herringbone, I'm going to take 1 of my 11-0 seed beads, and that's going to work to create basically a point at the end of my triangle. So normally we've been putting 2 beads in, but you can see when you put 1 there, it creates that little triangular point. Going in then here, you're going to increase your peyote stitch, adding a bead, sewing through the next open one. And again, the dragon thread is just really great for this because it pulls through really nicely, yet still has that, maintains that nice shape. And then we'll be able to go into the fringe right away with that same thread and not have to switch off thread for our fringe. From here then, when you get to the next corner, you're coming through that herringbone, you're going to do the exact same thing. So this time just add 1 bead and sew through bead number 2 on that herringbone row that you're coming out of. So see how that gets that nice point? We're going to go through to our next 2 sides, creating that point, and then we'll meet right back here at the top at that single bead our thread will be coming out of. Once you get to the top and all of your sides match, you're going to add a wire guard. Now, if you don't have any wire guards, you can simply add a couple seed beads to make your loop. But you can see, even without the ear wires, how nice and polished these look. When I go to put the ear wires in, they will sit really, really well. Another little thing that you can do is look at this and look how cute this would be if you wanted to kind of make it look like a Santa or a little gnome. You could play around with the beads. So what I'm going to do is add a wire guard. And if you love wire guards, chalk people into them, you can comment below the video. I love the look of them at the top. Coming out of that top bead, we're going to add the wire guard. We're going to sew down through the other side of the wire guard. And then what we're going to do is sew back through that same bead that our thread is coming out of. So the thread was originally coming out the right. We added our wire guard, making sure that our thread stayed in that little channel. And then we're going back through that same bead. From here, we want to get down to the bottom because that's where we're going to add our fringe. If you don't want to add fringe, you can simply go ahead and just tie your thread off here. I'm going to take my needle and thread down through that spine. But first what we're going to do, because I'm not coming back up here, is it's always a good idea to reinforce your thread. So I'm going to go back through that wire guard, go back through the top, come back through, and then we'll work our way down to the bottom. As we get to the bottom, there are so many options that you could use for fringe. You can do fringe straight down and let it hang down like the Oasis earrings, which was based on brick stitch. You can also, if you want to, do bigger loops, or you can do more as well. I'm just going to go right down through that spine. So I'm taking my needle and thread the whole way down through one of those sides of my herringbone stitch. From there then, to get to the corner, we're going to take our thread and go down the next side of the triangle. Very, very simple. If you want to, you can also take it on the exterior of the peyote. That's up to you, just not adding any extra peyote beads. Or if you want to, you could add extra peyote beads, make it a little bit more of an isosceles triangle too. So many different variations. From here, I want you to come out through that corner bead. So we're here at the bottom, we have our top nice and stable, we're ready to go and to add our drops. You can see here with the golden pair, I did a smaller drop. With our purple pair here, I'm doing a bigger drop. So you can really pick whatever pattern you want. I'm going to do 2 delicas followed by 3 11-ohs, pick up a Potomac Crystal 3mm round, followed by some more 11-ohs, then another Potomac Crystal round, and then another 1 seed bead. I'm going to put in here some of the Potomac Crystal teardrops. And these are a 3x5mm. And I just want to make sure as I'm doing this outer edge that I have the smaller side facing up. So I'm going to put the smaller side on first and then the bigger side facing down. From here, I need to pour out a couple more of my 11-oh seed beads here. And I'm going to basically repeat the pattern with one of my 3mm beads on the interior. Finish up my pattern then, and we'll get back into the center, and I'll show you how we're going to climb over to get ready to do our next little drop, because that's going to be the same no matter what size you make your triangle. So here we are back at the other side now. So I have all my beads on, and you want to make sure that you're not sewing from the outside to the inside of that 11-oh. Very important whenever you do fringe, if you're coming off of the fringe one way, you want to mirror that on the other side. So see how the thread is coming out of that corner bead. We've added all our beads. We want to make sure that we're going in to that corner bead along the same way. Pull that nice and tight, and we have our first little fringe section here. From here, we're going to hop over to come out that delica. The thread is so easily maneuverable and kind of hides in there, that green thread, that we're going to show a tiny bit of it, but you really won't see it. We're going to hop over to the right side bead of that herringbone stitch right below, and then out through the delica. So see how I went up that bead, making sure that it mirrors the other side, then came down through the 11-oh right beside it, and down through the delica. From here, we're going to pick up our next pattern, which is 4 11s, delica, drop, delica, 1 11, 3 of our crystals, and then the opposite way, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to add all those on, get ready to go through my delica on the other side, and then I'll show you how we're going to get to the center of the drop. Once you put on your second set of beads, you want to make sure that it is coming out and that you're going through exactly as you were the opposite side. So you're coming out towards that delica bead, towards the center. I'm going to go in the delica bead on the opposite side from the center towards the exterior after doing my pattern of my 3 11s, delica, crystal, 11, or delica, 11, 3, and then following. From here, I'm going to get back to those 3 open delicas there by going up through the 11-oh seed bead that sits directly above. And this is going to be true for any time you're doing fringe in this manner with the triangle. And then you're going to go through the next 2 delicas toward the center on that diagonal. You want to make sure as you're doing this that your thread is not impacting the design whatsoever, and that dragon thread flows really nicely into these drops. From here, going through the center, I am going to go ahead and do 2 11s, then a delica, a 3mm crystal, and then another one of my crystal drops, We'll put an 11-0 on the end to hold in that crystal drop. Go back up through the crystal round and the crystal drop, coming out before the delica, and give a nice little pull. On the other one, I just had 4 beads from the center and used one 3mm bead. From here, I'm going to repeat the delica and the 2 11-0s, and then once again, make sure I'm going into that third delica bead so that the thread is coming through in the same direction, pulling that nice and tight. And then last thing I have to do, very simply, is sew right back along the line, get to the center, and then flip my thread over and tie off the thread ends to the back of the design. You can usually tie them off and burn them down nice and close so you don't see them at all. It's great to see, and I can't wait to see everybody's different versions in our beading group for beading and jewelry making. Go ahead and post there on Facebook, because this is really an inspirational piece and you can make so many different variations and drops and designs on your own. Again, just like those little gnomes or Rudolph for Christmas time, you have your Santa for the drop, and really have fun creating those fringe off that simple triangle base. Thanks so much for joining me in creating these fun ancient earrings. Whether or not you do them in the golden colors, a little bit smaller, or go big and bold like mine, you can change them up dramatically. Remember, if you need any materials, go ahead and look below the video in the little description, and you can check out and get links to our shop online there. I really love to see everybody's creations, and hopefully these create and intensify your imagination, that you do your own versions and post your pictures in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for our next inspirational video.